war because I'm gonna lose.
I'm Bianca Vivian, and this is Ask Viv.
Okay, you got me. I'm here. Welcome to episode 1, secretly episode 44 of Ask Viv. Where have I been? So for the last year, I really could not do this podcast. And I thought I was actually done with it. I had reached this impasse where I felt fundamentally ill-equipped to give advice. And I felt like a failure, honestly and frankly. It was a lot of things. I felt like I was a failure in my relationships. I felt like I was a failure over the things that I was tasked to hold on to professionally. I felt like a religious failure, even though I was praying 5 times a day, even though I was striving for my highest good. I felt like I had failed. I felt like I had failed myself. I felt like I had failed my body. I was all around failing. I couldn't find Viv. I need to be with with Bianca. And so I'm so happy to be back here with you guys. Like, I genuinely feel like it's a kind of resurrection, alhamdulillah. It is the 19th day of Ramadan, and this episode is now for war. At first, I called this episode a case for failure. I was going to explain all of the failures that I had over the last year. But in prepping to do this show, the country I'm in went to war. I've been in the UAE and the United Arab Emirates for the last 3 weeks or so. And on February 28th, saw a missile flying through the sky out of my bedroom window, and the world went to war. And I think, people have made light of it. People hate Dubai. Fair. People hate Abu Dhabi. They hate kind of what this region stands for. They think of excess. They think of the ongoing genocide with our brothers in Sudan. Fair. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is the geopolitical position of the GCC. And I'll be very brief with this, but just to say, the entirety of the American economy is propped up on the Gulf countries' money. Okay, all of the new investment that you see in tech, all of the major purchases for New York real estate that has been built over the last 10 years, all of that money, all of it, literally well over 80% of it comes from the Saudis, comes from the Emiratis, comes from Bahrain, comes from Jordan. And so if this place collapses, you have the inevitable collapse of the United States economy. Our fates are so inextricably bound up with one another that sometimes it's laughable to me that people think I want to see those people fail. And at worst, if you're on Twitter, which I try not to be anymore, I want to see these people die, without realizing our fates are very, very inextricably bound. And so 28th comes, we go to war. It was very ironic because only maybe 2 days before that, I was watching Imam Omar Suleiman, Palestinian Imam from Dallas, who I love. And he has his Ramadan series, his 30 for 30 Ramadan series. And he's talking about Gaza. And they're talking about how these people in Palestine are getting through war and surviving war. And he says, the guests on this panel are describing that they've actually memorized quite a bit of the Quran. And all I thought at that time was God, this is making me feel so inadequate, because I'm going through Ramadan. I read the Quran daily, but I'm definitely not at a place even right now that I'm going to finish it by the end of Ramadan. Inshallah, I do. But I was feeling very intimidated. I was feeling I don't have the faith for war. I'm damn, this is making me feel inadequate. These people are superheroes. These people have something that I don't have. These people know something about Islam that I don't know. They know something about God that I don't know. And I'm feeling that sense of inadequacy, and I'm entrenched in it. And honestly, that has been a lot of my feeling this Ramadan. Is just not good enough. These prayers are not good enough. Tara, are we not good enough? And that's my ego, right? The shaitan is locked up. My ego is just not good enough. Then 2 days later, I'm in war. And people have been kind of trying to describe what's going on in the UAE as war light, right? Because all these missiles have been being intercepted. The defense system is very strong. You have these allied countries like France who are like sending in reinforcements. There hasn't been any chaos. There's no run on the banks. There's no civil disorder. Whereas in America, mind you, like we've robbed each other over toilet paper during COVID. So it's not that kind of situation. But how do you say it's not real war when real people are dying from it? You know, a young Pakistani man who was driving his car just last night on the highway, debris fell from a missile and he was killed. Young Bangladeshi worker who was a father. I had to watch a video of his son crying and crying and crying. He couldn't even look at the camera to describe the loss he was facing of his father, who was a migrant worker living in the migrant camps, who died the first day of the war. So try not to make light of it, make light of the situation. You know, I was saying I'm traumatized it's not excessive to say. Like the first night especially, when we got the first warnings of the missiles and we heard them overhead, my building started to shake. I actually even got a missile alert today, but quickly you find that you actually become very used to these things. We were told to evacuate. I evacuated to shelter in a bomb shelter. I'm sitting there and I'm sending voice notes to my family, to my best friends, just telling them like, hey, the situation has gotten out of control. It's escalated greatly. I went to bed like laughing about it, like telling people like, oh, there's not gonna be war in the Gulf, and then took a nap and then woke up and literally it was like full scale war. Blasts going off, fire alarms going off, buildings shaking, seeing missiles overhead. And I remembered this video that I had seen from Omar Suleiman about the people in Gaza who had memorized the Quran. And I'm finding myself packing my bags because when war starts, I think it's really crazy how American it is and how racist it is that we actually think that some people are more equipped for war than others. We think some people actually have a better tendency towards crisis management because they've grown up in Lebanon or in Syria or in Iraq. Like, no, like when I heard these noises, and I have like this duffel bag in front of me, I start putting nonsense in it. Like, voila, I start putting nonsense in this bag. Like I put a shirt, a like cropped polo sweater, my Quran, my laptop charger, my passport, my phone charger with no outlet, and like some crackers. Because like there's a ringing in my ears, like this alarm is sounding, you hear these missiles going boom, 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 and you go really dizzy. I got really dizzy and really, really lightheaded, and I couldn't breathe. I really couldn't breathe. And I'm thinking like, this is not something you ever get used to, because this is something that is not, this is averse to all notions of safety. And this is a contrived sense of emergency, right? This is not like, okay, there's a fire. Like you can see the fire, you see how quickly it's spreading. Like, no, you hear sounds from way far off. You hear people yelling. You're trying to read this government alert in Arabic, mind you. The alert that came to my phone was not in English. I had to send it to my friend who roughly translated it for me. And then I went on the internet and found what it said in English. So I'm not even fully sure what is going on. And that sense of craze, right? That sense of doom. But what I had was my la ilaha illallah, like there is no God but Allah. That's what I had. And it's funny how when you're warring, like you find the tools, like the discipline of Islam and the discipline of this life, right? The physical strength that you've built up, the mental fortitude that you've built up. It is the thing that you reach for. You reach for the things that you truly, truly have. And it's funny because I always I'd be like, oh, well, if the world was ending, I wouldn't need anything but my Quran. The truth is that like the physical book, you have it, and yes, it's a comfort, but like you don't have any time to read it. I'm like sitting here doom scrolling in the dark of this like shelter in a basement of a maid's quarters of a building next door, and I can't breathe. I can't really see. I can't conceive of anything. I'm trying to send my mother photos of the bed just so that she knows like I'm sleeping somewhere. I cried. I wanted my older sister. She wasn't answering the phone, which is crazy because she answers the phone. If I like call and ask you, hey, what was the name of that B2K member 20 years ago? And she'll answer 2 seconds, but no, not for war. Called her 6 or 7 times. And so it was just a very small glimpse into a world that people had known, in perpetuity in Gaza and Palestine and Sudan and Lebanon. And it's not my first interaction with war. Strangely enough, like I moved to Bangladesh when I was a kid. I was 16 and I went for like a study trip, I moved there. And as I was there, it was a time where like revolution was burgeoning. And so I would see the vans that were on fire. I would see the like mass protests in the street, mass uprising. School would be canceled. We would be told to stay inside. All of the businesses would close. And these men would start warring with the government. And I didn't know that 2016 buildup would lead 9 years later to the overthrow of the Bangladeshi government. And the person who would then be installed as the interim president, prime minister, Muhammad Yunus, was actually the founder of the school that I went to. And so I've seen, when countries are changing and rapid change, and I've seen violence, and I was a journalist on the ground during Black Lives Matter. So I'm not a stranger to these things. I grew up in a dangerous place. I grew up in the middle of wars for no reason. I had a lot of friends that were killed when I was younger. When I was in high school, actually, I lost some of my best friends to gun violence. And so war is not something that when it came to me, I was in a fundamental state that a lot of, I think, Americans are in, which is just like, I'm deeply afraid of death. No. What was my mindset, though, was, why me? Why me? And that's what I kind of want to talk about today, is when you're warring, and so many of us are warring in our lives, like so many of us are warring with what our lives have become, because we have a vision of our life, and it's always very particular, right? And it's right around 26 or 27, your late 20s, your early 30s, when life, it starts to diverge. And I think the type A, the gifted kid, the eldest daughters, all of these kind of tropes, these archetypes of control freaks, that's what they all are. They're control freaks. Like we've become people who give it a bunch of different monikers, a bunch of different names, but we live in a society of control freaks. And when life starts to veer off a path that you had imagined for it, you begin to war to bring it back, right? You really want the life that you had in mind. And I always say this, and I've said this many times on this podcast, like we're not satisfied until we are God, right? And what we actually call faith is usually us bringing to God in supplication our plans and asking God to get with our program. And I think the really kind of funny thing about faith and the funny thing about God is that He will. He will, in our youth, and this is how you know you're very young, is like you ask God for things and God blesses those things, and He blesses them to the point where you feel like it's your idea. You think that you are the mastermind concocting this plan and this vision over your life, and that God is endorsing it because it was actually your original plan. And it's kind of funny because I have like older Arab friends, and they have this kind of saying that like when you're a child from like 0 to 9, you're their slave. And from like 9 to 12, they're your slave. You're their slave from 0 to 9. They're your slave from 9 to 12. And then after that, they have to be your friend. And it's just this thing of like, you build trust with a child by indulging their worldview and giving them pretty much everything they want, so they feel the sense of safety and they feel that you have their best interest in mind. And then from 9 to 12, you have to shape them, you have to discipline them, you have to grow them up. And there's a resistance to that because they're also at war with their bodies. They're at war with this world that doesn't resemble the safe, warm comfort that was in their internal home. And so what do you do in those situations when you're transitioning from a time in which you were puppeteering everything to a time where it feels like, wait, this is not going my way? And I have a lot of friends that are at this crossroads, right? Like, you thought that you were going to ignore your mother's calls and, be flippant and kind of throw her by the wayside while you did your own thing and found your own career and set your own boundaries and made a safe space for yourself. And then your mom passes away, right? And you planned on 30 years. You plan on working out somewhere down the line in therapy, working it out somewhere down the line, in family reunions or Thanksgivings, and then all of a sudden your mom is gone and your family is like, oh, well, we didn't expect that, and now you're warring with what you had in mind because you always think you have time. Islam warns us against this, but we're humans. We always think we have more time than we do. Or, you think, okay, I've done my healing. I've learned how to set my boundaries. I know how to communicate. Now I'm going to venture into love with the best intentions. I know all of the red flags. I know not to fall for the sweet talk. I know to wait, this many months or this many days before I interact with this person physically. And you have all of your plans and then you get played anyway. Or, you get married at 23 and then by 30 you're divorced. And you are truly sitting here like, wait, this is not what I had in mind. And of course, the very first thing to do is to try to pull yourself back. Try to pull yourself back into some semblance of what was. Because I can't let it go. I can't let it go because I have fashioned an identity around these things, right? I spent most of my early 20s warring to get this television show. I mean, what I've been through, I'll tell you guys one day, like all the crazy things I went through trying to sell this show. And then I get it on the air in the middle of a pandemic, mind you. Okay, mashallah, give her a 10. And then one season and it's over. And all I'm thinking now is I could have gone to graduate school, the amount of sacrifice. I could have moved to different countries during the pandemic when everybody was moving, but I hunkered down to make this dream come true. I watched it come true, and just as quickly as I watched it come true, I'm watching it slip through my fingers, right? Just as quickly as my stepdad got his diagnosis for brain cancer is as quickly as I'm saying goodbye to bury him. And this kind of warring over time, this is what I had in mind, it really, really denigrates our relationship to God, because that kind of compounded disappointment, we charge God and say like, wait, you tricked me. And we don't want to admit that our faith is contractual, right? Because in Christianity, I really do remember growing up, there was a concept of a covenant. And it was this notion, for example, of like Noah, like he would build the ark. And then once he built the ark, to save all these people and these animals from damnation, effectively, then God promised once they were above water and the storm had cleared, I'll never flood the earth again. We don't have these concepts in Islam. All Islam offers is God. God is like, you can have me and you can have me. And it also says constantly, like, Allah is sufficient, meaning you can have me and that will be enough every single time. But to really reach that place of sufficiency takes a level of warring that we don't want. We don't want it. I don't want a war because I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose. And I'm gonna lose because I don't trust you. And I don't trust you because life is not what I had in mind. And we're not satisfied until we are God. And that's the honest truth. And so the first reaction is to draw back, I want to try to recover something of what I've lost. And so we start to make real compromising decisions. We start to take the relationship that looks like comfort, but actually has nothing to do with what we want or desire in our heart of hearts. We take jobs that offer a sense of security, stable ground below our feet, that we know that it's not our dream vocation or even what aligns with our highest talents. We begin to form communities and cliques and hobbies and anything that can provide a sense of safety to say, like, you are not going to draft me into this war, right? And then that falls apart. Always does. That's what people call midlife crisis. Alhamdulillah, I'd have to wait to midlife. I'd have to be 45. Like, mine fell apart very quickly, okay? All the little things I was choosing for myself, I'm just a fundamentally in my heart of hearts, I seek honesty. I can act, but I cannot lie. I'm a really bad liar, because I live for the truth. I struggle for the truth. I war for truth. Like, it's something that it's always been the way that I've been. Like, give me the truth so I can have something, because with the lie I have nothing at all. And I've said that many times. I've written that many times. I have a penchant for honesty. So living in false circumstances makes me deeply uncomfortable. I can't make it through a dinner. Falsehood, fiending, interest in things I'm not interested in. I can't do any of it. So the next thing, once we're disappointed and once things shatter and things fall apart, as they always do, then we go into a mode of self-pity. Yeah, that's what we do. We start to just really pity ourselves. And that's what I was stuck in for a long time. I kept asking myself, why me? Why me? And I was like, I just kept qualifying myself to be like, but I'm a good person. And in fact, what I really couldn't qualify is when I was more morally compromised and a lot more immature and selfish, I was getting a lot more of what I wanted. And so it was very difficult for me to contend with any sense of, like you have to understand, like my physiological being and my mental and spiritual constitution was unraveling, because I fundamentally started to believe that God did not like me. And I couldn't, because I'm like, why am I always warring? Why am I warring? Why am I seeking this direction of safety and comfort and I keep getting pulled into the mire, right? Why do I keep applying for a job? I'll get the job and then I lose the job. Why do I keep thinking I'm reaching solid ground in a romantic relationship? I'm lending towards marriage and now he's gone. Like, what is it that is fundamentally wrong with me that I can't seem to do things that seem to be so easy for the secular person? So I'm praying 5 times a day, God. I'm trying to remain chaste. I'm increasing my modesty. I'm reading the Quran. I'm giving charity. I'm not cussing. I'm not sexing. I'm not lying. But yet I'm struggling. I'm warring. And it's the fundamental religious question of, why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, right? And it's us trying to take our very feeble and fickle minds and the overthinkers that we are, the intellectuals that we are, we're trying to shrink God into our understanding. And the thing is, it's not innocent, right? We're trying to shrink God so we can charge him. We're trying to shrink God so that we can charge him. It's not an act of love. We're trying to conceive of what he's doing so we can tell him to stop. We're trying to conceive of what he's doing so we can tell him to stop doing it, right? How do you end this holy war? How do you get out of this quandary? How do you finally find a way to make peace with the things that are happening to you, even when understanding is not imminent? I had a friend that used to tell me, we always think we're turning a corner when we're not. And when he said it to me, I was really pissed. I was like, that's terrible advice. That doesn't make me feel very good, thanks. And I found the thing about growing up is that you find it to be true. You always want it to be a transition season, right? I love that. I'm in a transition season. We can't really face change without the immediate transaction of what am I going to get for all the changes I'm going through. And that's why people are obsessed with exercise and weight loss, right? That's why people are obsessed with self-help books, 10 steps to a more powerful life, 5 steps of habits of the healthy mind, blah, 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 because we're control freaks. We're control freaks, and this world has built not just control freaks, but people who want instant gratification. But all Islam offers is God, and the only way you get God is through submission. So you go like hands up on my knees, like, okay, I'm here and I give up. And once I did that, once life brought me to my knees, once I'm landlocked, it's funny now, right, being in Dubai, because you have all these multi-millionaires. You have the most pristine, beautiful, well-paid people, super successful people on earth, and none of them can pay to get on a plane because there are no planes to get on. And you have this quandary, right? What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Well, that's an impossibility in physics. It's a moot point. It's not a real question because it's actually physically impossible. So what do you find in life? You find either it's not an unstoppable force or it's not an immovable object. And what I found is that God is truly an immovable object. And I am truly not an unstoppable force. Okay? And that was my betrayal, and that was my baptism. Because when I realized I'm not an unstoppable force, right? I couldn't girl boss my way out of this one. I didn't have the words, and I wasn't finding them, and it would be months and months and months on end. And these are the things that lend themselves to suicidal ideation, okay? Like, now I'm talking to you with serious words. These are the things that lend themselves to severe, long stretches of depression. These are the things that lend themselves to self-destruction, because truly what it was idolatry, and everything you place before God will betray you, period, no matter what it is. I had a notion of myself that was then reified in the world by several people who put me on a pedestal thinking that they were doing me a favor, but in reality they were giving me a false sense of indestructibility that then when I was really faced with basic inconveniences of life, of job loss or heartbreak or things that come to everybody, I felt specifically victimized because I had this idea of myself that was larger than life. And God was not getting with my program. So now I'm warring with God, okay? And I'm losing. I'm losing. So what can you do? Well, we know what to do because, the story in the Bible, Jacob does war with God. He's walking through the wilderness and he meets with an angel that is a representative of God himself, and they begin to war. And this is said to be, by Islamic scholars, a story of the arrogance of the Israelites, right? So Jacob is warring with God, and finally, after hours and hours and hours of doing this fight, God just touches the socket of Jacob's hip, and his hip goes out, and he suddenly realized, like, wait, I don't want to war with you. I don't want to war with you. And so he submits, he gets on his knees, and he prays to God. And in that place that he prays, he renames that place Israel. And Israel means one who has seen God and lived. Okay, that's the story of the name Israel, of what it means and how it came into being with the prophet Jacob, peace be upon him. So I had to come to that point where I say to myself, like, okay, I'm done warring with God. I don't want to war with God anymore. I don't want to war with God anymore. I don't want to war with God anymore. So then the question moves from why me, right? To what now? What now? And what now is a beautiful space to be in. I go from why me to what now? And what now is the place of reality. And the dreamers, if you're like me, if you're a dreamer, if you see visions, right, in the words of the great Solange, if you see things that you imagine, you have a very, very difficult time with reality. But reality became my refuge, right? What do I have to eat? Where can I go? Even in times of COVID, in times of war, it really becomes 100% about your immediate reality. There is no more like future concept of the future. The past actually becomes incredibly useless in a way that's almost soothing, because last week looks nothing like this. I don't remember what I was doing last week. So it's a confrontation with reality, and that's when you begin to interact with the sufficiency of life, right? When God says he's sufficient, when you realize, okay, this immovable object, this object that is all encompassing and bigger than everybody, that is everything, everywhere, all at once, what can he do for me if I can be present in the what now? And what I was revealed to when I laid down my sword is, it then became a question of, who do you want me to become? Who do you want me to become? And that's where I am now. And one thing I know is that I had to be stronger. I had to be physically stronger. I just didn't have it. Guys, I could not do a push-up. I didn't have my physical strength. I couldn't run a mile. And that's what I spent the last year doing, was confronting the reality of my body, the fact that I couldn't have confidence. I couldn't speak in the way I wanted to. I couldn't even do this work, right? I couldn't get in front of a camera because I was afraid of myself. I could not face the mirror. And it really was because I had no strength. And so I built my strength. And I'm like, okay, so who do you want me to become now? I had to become more prayerful. I had to become somebody who took prayer very seriously. And last year, I actually enrolled in Islamic school. And I started taking lessons in Arabic and praying in Arabic. I had been a Muslim my entire adult life, but I hadn't learned how to read prayers in Arabic. I didn't know the Arabic alphabet. So I got really serious about my deen. What is this situation trying to make me is the real question. And the irony of it, and it's funny because it's not. It's funny because it's not. The irony is the person who's trying to make me, the person it is trying to make you is a soldier. And I think what's really interesting about discipline, my best friend Miles right now, mashallah, he's fasting for the very first time for Ramadan. And he's really contending with the discipline of it. And so many men are drawn into Islam because of the discipline, because people think it's like 75 hard, or, you know, like a 30-day detox. And they're obsessed with the discipline of it. They're like, oh, this is gonna give me discipline. And I saw these beautiful brothers, mashallah, and I think they're in Philly, and every morning they do miles before Fajr, where they run through the cold, all for Ramadan. They run every morning before Fajr, and Fajr is anywhere again between like 4:30 a.m. and like 6:30 a.m. depending on where you are in the world and what time of year it is. So these guys are up at like 5 a.m. running. And the thing that they love to say, and I would wear it on a hoodie, is Fajr is for soldiers. And it's funny because you're a Muslim, and so you're no stranger to discipline and the chastity of it, and the prayer and the recitation and all of these kinds of, the modesty, the hijab. Like, you get used to the concept of discipline, but you don't want to be tested on that discipline in war. Like that whole like, oh, like Fajrs are for soldiers. Yeah, but not for real war. You want, like, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, like, we all have two jihads, two struggles, the internal struggle and the external struggle. And we really, really want to get drafted into the internal one. Like, God, let it be generational curses that I'm breaking. Let it be my mental health. Let it be my, you know, war with confidence. Don't have me out warring. Hello, like, don't draft me for Gaza. Don't ask me to fight for Elon. Don't ask me to be in a political struggle. Don't. I actually had a former friend, right before I went on television. She asked me, she's like, so you're really gonna do this, huh? And I was like, I'm really gonna do what? And she's like, you're really gonna go ahead and be an entertainer. And I was like, well, yeah, like that was always my dream. That's my plan. I come from a family of entertainers. And she says to me, I always imagined that you were more of a Malcolm X than a Beyonce. And I looked her dead in the eyes and I said, well, you're wrong. You're wrong. So imagine my surprise when I do start to get drafted right into the Malcolm X struggles of it. Now I'm dead center of a geopolitical struggle, and I'm having to pick sides, and I'm having to think thoughts, bigger thoughts than just me. It's not even my tendency as an American, push for love. It's not. As a girl, it's not. I'm just worried about, what I'm gonna wear, what I'm gonna eat, my matcha Pilates, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was always a bit more worldly than that, a bit more entrenched in the struggle, collective struggle of others, but always only to the extent that I was comfortable. Now I'm uncomfortable. And so we practice all this discipline. It's almost funny. Like, I remember I went on a date once with this guy who was super buff, because people here are obsessed with fitness. I went on a date with him, and when I asked him like what he did for fun, I remember being shocked because he had never been hiking. And when he talked about like, oh, we can go hiking, he wanted to go to like this like geodome, like really expensive glass geodome to watch the stars out in the desert. And it was like $1,000 a night. And I was like, this is not camping, right? Like I've camped on like the borders of the Amazon in like the middle of nowhere and like through Southeast Asia. Like I've lived on a boat. Like I've been fully real deal camping. And I thought to myself, why the hell are you so buff? Why the hell are you so buff? Why are you so buff? And yeah, it was weird. Honestly, it was weird. That was weird to me. I'm like, why are you so buff? And yet you've never contended with the natural elements. Like, why are you so strong? And the thing about it is, a lot of our discipline is for vanity, right? We don't want test. And it's okay. It's okay. Because the prophet, peace be upon him, he said, like, don't pray for struggle. Don't ask for your test to be poverty. Like, if you can choose, let your test be riches, and then be tested in your generosity. If you can choose, let your test be that your parents live long lives and you see how you treat them. Don't be tested with sudden death. Don't be tested with grievances or a life that suddenly falls apart, or you're drafted into war. But then you get your test. I've gotten my test so many times in this life. But I've been drafted into so many sudden miracles, but I've been drafted into so many sudden grievances of eviction, or sudden loss of a friend, burying my best friend when I was 20 years old. Like I've found so many times, okay, my number's being called, I'm being picked, and now you're being tested on all that strength and discipline that was effectively a vanity project, right? Like, I was reading books so that I could be interesting at dinner. I didn't want my knowledge to really be tested, right? To have to speak up for others and to imagine new political realities. I did not really want my life to be a testament to my strength. I wanted it to be a testament to my beauty, because I love what's beautiful and I worship what is beautiful and I worship what is strong. But don't ask me to be tested in those things, because I've built those things through my ugliness and through my weakness. A time for war. What do you do when you're up against a life that you didn't have in mind? And you always say, like, I'm not one of those people. I'm not going to be able to survive this. I think the thing to do in these times of war, ironically, you have to surrender. I am finding a new sense of surrender, unlike any I've ever known in my life. I'm finding I have to lay my burdens down at the end of the day. I had to call my father the other day, who was lecturing me to tell me, you need to come home. Well, what home? I had more mental angst visiting Atlanta for 5 weeks to, have his 70th birthday back in January. I wanted to leave every day. I was like, damn, I'm now in like a place where I am actually in imminent physical danger, and I am not nearly as anxious as I was just being in Southern America. So home, the answer, I said to him, I said, listen, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back. Where I will go now, the world stretched out before me, I don't know. But I know I have to put one foot in front of the other and walk towards the reality that's in front of me. I said, even if I wanted to get on a plane, I couldn't. I couldn't, because the airspace is closed and the airports are closed. And if I was to take a bus to a plane, to a bus, to another plane, to the club, to the, like, wherever I was supposed to go, getting on that plane, it'd be like $10,000, so I have to surrender to the reality that I'm in. And it doesn't mean I don't love you. And I know so many people are at this place where you're looking at what you cannot do. You're looking at the closed door, and I can't tell you how many times I have stood in front of the Red Sea and I asked it to part. And when it didn't, I charged God with infidelity. And I didn't realize that there is something so beautiful in learning how to swim. Recently, my friend Wale, he says to me, he says, Bianca, you could stand in front of the ocean and you can scream with all of your might. You could scream with all of your might and it wouldn't change the tides even a bit. And I said to him, you know what, I agree. And I think growing up is learning to see that inability as a mercy from God instead of a punishment. Because I can't change the tides of the ocean, because I can't change these deafening and drastic circumstances, because I'm losing the plot to such a crazy extent, because my life is turning into something I thought it'd never be, because my country is turning into a place I never imagined, and I had dreams for this country, despite the fact that I'm filled with so much resentment towards it. I still had dreams for my America, right? I had dreams for my love life, and my dreams, they're not coming true in the ways that I thought they would, and the ways that they did are so disappointing because this dunya, this earthly realm, is full of unending disappointment. And so I'm surrendering, and I have to learn to see that as God's love instead of his chastening. I have to learn to see that as a kind of freedom instead of a kind of restriction, because I'm coming to terms with what I can really do and who I can really be. And everybody as a child tells you the sky is the limit, and that becomes the freedom of the child to fly. But as an adult, you start to see how really short the ceiling is just above your head. And that can feel like a kind of prison, but I'm learning, wait, this is what it really is, and this is who I really am. And I think of Toni Morrison when she says, like, there's a free person in there somewhere, locate her and let her do some good in the world. And so I'm learning what I can really make with just these hands. What I can really say with just this tripod, just this camera. You know, what would I do if I didn't have this global platform that I had when I was 19, where every opinion that I had was being shot off to 3 million people a day to decide, you know, how brilliant I was. And what if I go home to an empty bed? And what if I have to learn to love the parts of me that nobody claps for? And what if at the end of the day, I'm standing in front of war, real war, imagine war, the war so many of us have in our minds, the war with my past, with my memory, and all I have is God. And what if the beauty is learning that that's enough? And that's where I'm at now. And that too is a love story. So let's get into these questions. because I know that's your favorite part. Dear Viv, it seems like every time I try to move forward, something of my past comes back to haunt me in almost every aspect of my life: financial, mental, emotional. How do you suggest I move forward each and every time I get torn down? Don't. You're not being haunted, you're being chased. Sit with it. Sit with the things that are chasing you down. I always thought that every single confrontation that was coming to my door was somehow testing me in this very overt way, that I was supposed to play the hero somehow and slay the dragon. And this made me incredibly hasty, right? And the prophet, peace be upon him, he says, like, when the shaitan, when Satan can't make you sin, he makes you rush. And we're always saying we're being haunted by something. A lot of times we're just being chased, and what we're doing is running away. And there's this big boogeyman, right? The boogeyman of debt, and the boogeyman of inadequacy, and the boogeyman of your ex that's gonna call you in the middle of the night. And we tell ourselves, like, I cannot face this. When I was in Islamic school last year, my ustada, my teacher, she said to me, every single thing that God does is a nurturing. Every single thing that he does is an invitation to nurturing. So you have got to ask yourself, these things that are haunting you, could it be you're actually being invited to face them so that you can learn something about who you are becoming? And could it be that you are actually refusing? And that refusal is a kind of agency. And I don't think we can't face that our refusal is a kind of agency because we love being victims of our own circumstances. And I'm not saying this as an insult to you, because I'm saying this as a reflection of myself. When you ask, why is this happening to me? All I'm trying to do is move forward. All I'm trying to do is check my boxes. So why is this happening to me? That seems like a totally reasonable question. But it's not being asked in sincerity. It's not actually, if we actually asked, why is this happening to me? From a perspective of, like, who am I meant to become by facing this thing? Then we would face it head on, right? When it comes to financial struggle, I know what that's like. I felt like I never had enough. And I really, really hated the concept of his grace is sufficient. Or, God has your risk. That's what we call it, R-I-Z-Q in Islam, your risk, like your provision. Because I said, no, this just is not enough. This is not enough for my lifestyle. This is not enough for my aspirations. This is not enough for all I had was my daily bread. And I hated it. I resented it greatly. Because I had these larger than life aspirations about what I was supposed to be buying, where I was supposed to be going, what I was supposed to be doing. But the truth is, I didn't want to stay still. Fundamentally, I was raised running. I was raised in a million different places. I moved all over the place. And every time my parents got a new good or bad idea about business, every time that they had an eviction or they were being called to a job to another place, they would just go. My life be damned. Like, people always say, like, they yearn for their childhood. Like, I don't. I deeply resented my childhood because I was always being pawned off and taken and exchanged and whisked off to some new place that I didn't know, and I wasn't trying to be adventurous. What was made out of me that I became a world traveler, subhanAllah. It's just like, God is the best of planners, and I have no fear of new places or people. I could end up in a place across the world tomorrow with zero fear, specifically because of the way that I was raised. But at the time, it was not fun. And what it did, it created in me was an aversion to sit still, because we feel like if I sit still, I will die here, right? And like, that's the thing, that's the person warring in us that feels like, I gotta go. Because if I sit here, I'm gonna die because I don't trust God and I don't trust life. And you don't have to trust. I think one thing that you don't hear in the mosque and you don't hear it in the church is that God actually can withstand our distrust. He's actually bigger than our apprehension towards him. And I reached a point in my life where I straight up was like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. And no, it's not something you can say to your mom, like, I don't trust God anymore, because they're just going to be like, oh, well, trust God. You can't say it to your imam, because they're going to feel insulted on God's behalf, because man thinks that he has the right to be insulted on God's behalf. But God is way far above all of that. And I was being challenged to sit still. I was being challenged to spend the money that I had, which for an American is very difficult, because we're a credit country, right? I'm living out in a real capital country. China is a cash country. The Middle East, these are cash states. People spend it because they have it to spend. America's a credit country. So we spend money that we don't have, and we find ourselves always in a deficit trying to make it up. So me, financially, it was a matter of learning to spend the money that I had, not the money I was gonna get, not the money that was in a promissory note or an invoice somewhere, not the money that I had on credit and debt, like just the money that I had. And it grew me up. It grew me up. And the mental fortitude that I have is what I have. When I feel I'm being taxed above measure, I tell people I don't have it. I'm like, you know what? You're leaning on a part of me right now that I don't have. I don't got it. I don't have it. And I think the thing that it is that in that way, you can't be larger than life. I have to meet myself at exactly where I am physically, exactly where I am mentally, because the Quran says this, and the Bhagavad Gita says this, and Buddhism says this, and the Bible says this. It's like, you will never be taxed with more than you can bear. So either one of two things are happening. Either I am the person putting this kind of pressure on me that is not actually existing in the outside world, right? I am conceiving of expectations of myself or leaning into things people are asking because I'm trying to make myself bigger than I am. And that is called the ego. Or a person in me is being born that can bear it. Something in me is actually something in me that is calling this unbearable is actually dying so that the person that can bear it can live, and that person can bear it so that I can carry other people through it. That's why we bear it. And it's kind of crazy, because we really don't want that to be the reason. We don't want other people to be the reason, but that's always the reason. And we know this because every prophet that was ever sent to humanity was sent because God loved who we could become. Every single hero that we have, like, they lived through the heroic part of their own personal war. The Muhammad Ali's and the Malcolm X's, may God grant them Jannah, is because of you and I, because we need people to believe in. And God says that he sends a messenger for every time. And we don't want to believe that the struggles that we face are so that we can have children that won't face them, or people who will face them a lot easier. For me, it wasn't a good enough reason. I think in our self-righteousness, we say like, oh, okay, I'm gonna learn to do this. Like, I'm gonna break this generational curse. You don't actually want to do that. You don't actually, like, in real life, when it really comes down to it, honey, you don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. Yeah. I would say if you constantly feel like there's something chasing you, I would say turn around and look it in the eyes and figure out what it is. Lay the credit card bills on the table and figure out what it is. Mentally, like, there was some things I had severe PTSD for years. I could not be in a car. I couldn't, because I got into 2 major car accidents in my life, and I really couldn't be in a car. I didn't like driving on the highway. And it just got to a point where it was hindering my life so much that I had to get therapy. And it turns out that it really wasn't being in the car. It was actually a fundamental feeling of unsafety that was born out of my unstable childhood. And once I learned to face it, I learned to face so many things. That's why I say it's an invitation to nurturing, because the thing that is chasing you, it's chasing you because it wants to wrap its arms around you and hold you until you become more of the person that you're meant to be. Because we don't change, we become more of who we really are. Yeah. Dear Viv, how do I open up my heart to tenderness? I often find in my current relationships, platonic and romantic, I can no longer be soft or vulnerable with them, and I don't receive it well when they're with me. Any advice on how to be a better lover and friend? I think we love too many people. Ooh, difficult to say. I really do think. I think when I look at my early 20s, the callousness that grew in me and the cynicism that grew in me towards love is because I loved too often. And I think the thing is that we can't conceive of romance in the way that our grandparents could, or like people of a different generation, because we have so many lovers. Even the concept of serial dating, even if it's not physical, the amount of people that come through our lives with the intention to love is too many. And I didn't realize this until I took an entire year off of dating. I took an entire year off where I just completely closed that part of my heart off. And it was because my heart had been shattered and my confidence had been shattered. But even when I came back, I realized the good in it was that we don't take enough time to truly understand, first of all, what love is. Love is devotion, period. Like, I'm so glad Islam taught me this, and I'm so glad that I'm not 25 anymore. I'm so glad that frontal lobe solidified. I am, because love is devotion. And even the Quran, there's a beautiful verse that I read recently during Ramadan, and it says, like, make a woman your wife. Do not relegate her to being your lover. And I was somebody that loved the concept of a lover when I was younger, and this is not to denigrate other kinds of relationships or types of commitments that people have, but I think that we have truly lost sight of what it means to be devoted, because devotion is not romantic, it's principled love. It's not fleeting, it's not rushing, it goes slow. I think the thing to ask yourself when you're dating is, why does this all need to happen right now? Why does this all need to happen all at once? And the truth is because a lot of times we know that our fickle hearts, once we've gotten our hit of dopamine, because we're gluttons for affection, it's not going to be there for that person if that sense of fleeting romance dies. We actually know ourselves. We think we're charging this person to be like, they need to tell me how they feel right now. We need to get together right now. And we're asking ourselves this because we're thinking, like, we think that they're going to run away. The truth is we're going to run away. Okay? The truth is we don't believe that we have staying power, because look at our attention span when it comes time to read a book. Look at our attention span when it comes time to have a listening ear and a real conversation with somebody. We are losing the ability to be still and to move slowly. So it makes sense that we have this kind of cynicism towards romance, because we want people to be everything, everywhere, all at once. And then we find that they're just people. And I think that the beauty of it, when you get to know people over long, tender stretches of time, is that there is so much to love. And I think it's the beauty of turning 30 this year, is that I know my friends now. I've had friends that I've known for so long, and they can't break my heart in the way that they could when I was 21. because there are people that I knew for so long and then our relationships ended. And I realized our friendships ended because they really were who they were. And I found that out over a stretch of time. And it's not devastating the way it is when you have these short love bombings, right? This kind of war that you have where you're just like, tell me what it means. Tell me what this means, the thing that you said the other day, and who are you really, and are you a good person, and how am I supposed to know, and where's my ring? And this kind of tug of war that we do to be like, I need to figure out immediately so that I don't have to be vulnerable, because I don't want to waste my time, because I don't have time to waste, because of my fear of imminent death that's actually operating under all of this, but also because I don't trust life and I don't trust you. Move slowly with people, and honestly, I'm a lot less curious about romance than I used to be. Meaning, like, I meet people, and when I realize like this is not somebody that I could have a devoted, committed relationship to, I detach. Why am I going to now be curious towards this person romantically if I don't think that we have something to sustain a lifetime together? And it's not to say that when you do get married, you do end up married for a lifetime, but it should be the intention that I want to do this slowly. I want to be with you for slow, boring days. I want to hear you talk on end. I'm a real yapper. Hello? Like, I want to be able to listen to you on it and your thoughts and your ideas. So if you're checking some of these boxes of beauty or vocation, or you can give me security or safety, but you're not intellectually curious, or you're not somebody that I can communicate with, or who I think cares about my destiny or my dreams, what are we even doing here? The thing is that our egos are so big that when we get even a taste or hint of affection or love, we rush into it because we want to feel good about ourselves. And I think until we really are honest about how incredibly self-serving we treat love, we keep thinking that we're being had, or the wool is being pulled over our eyes, when in reality, there's not a bone of sincerity in your body. And I had to remove myself from the military romantic complex of America to truly understand that, like, we were not operating with an ounce of sincerity. And when I finally went back to that time in my life, I had a lot of people to apologize to, because in my mind, I just at the time was like, this is not doing it for me. This is not enough. This is not enough. None of this is enough. I'm going to need 3 people. This is not enough. And it was just because it was like, I wasn't operating with any notion that, like, there was a person standing in front of me waiting on me for an answer. And I was trying to extract as much as I could from this person in the way of energy, resources, and entertainment, meanwhile trying to hide the deepest parts of my own vulnerabilities because I didn't know how to be sincere. But I know now. Yeah, and sincerity is very slow, and sincerity is very plain. It's damn near autistic. It's very much giving, like, oh, we're not gonna work out. I don't think I'm gonna like this. I don't think I'm gonna like this. I don't like you. I don't like you, and I don't think I'm gonna like you. And I'm very much that person now. That's like, if I don't think that things are going to go in a direction that can be sustained, I don't even put one foot forward. And that ends up being a lot of time alone. And that's a war in of itself. I'm not gonna lie. Perfect question for Ramadan. Dear Viv, as a woman of faith, how do you let go of the things of this world that you are attached to that God is against? I'm struggling so much, and I've become emotionally and mentally exhausted from battling the ways of the world and trying to please God. You don't let them go. Like, I've actually been asking myself this question, because I feel so tested. I'm always feeling tested. I'm always feeling tested by vanity. I have difficulty wearing the hijab. I war with modesty. I war with vanity. I war with overspending. I war with lust. Like, I'm warring with everything on that list. Like, short of like pork and drugs, I war with all of it. And it's meant to be warred with. That's the higher jihad. That's the internal struggle. It's meant to be warred with. I think, like I said, understanding the immovability of God and understanding the names of God, the supreme all-knowing, it really, it's comforting when you truly think about it. When you know who God is and you're curious about who God is, you realize like he's not shocked by anything. There's nothing that does. You shock yourself sometimes in the way that you fall privy to these things that you thought you were better than. You find yourself gossiping for an hour when you told yourself that you weren't going to backbite, right? Or you find yourself in somebody's bed and you swore you weren't trying to be there. And all of these things, you're condemning yourself. And part of it is that feeling that you're hiding from God, but there's no such thing as hiding from God. And I think the thing that I've learned in my short life, the wisdom I've gotten, is that the things that God was keeping me from, they really were destructive. But I don't say that from a place holier than thou. My sister sent me a video yesterday and it said like, the girl, she says, she's like, oh, when I was sinning, like you guys are still sinning, you know, because I know that you are. And she said it was me, that I always say that, like, oh, you know, when I used to sin the way you guys are sinning now. But the truth is I just got tired of it. Like there are certain battles you face in life that you just have to decide, am I going to want to face this one again? Right? Like you end up with the wrong person enough times and you have to truly sit and wonder to yourself, like, how many times am I going to walk down this same road? And my friend Cherry, she used a brilliant metaphor that exists in Swahili, where she says, like, you walk down a street and then you fall into the crack of a sidewalk. And then you walk down that same street and to avoid the crack, you get hit by a car stepping into the road. At a certain point, you have to decide to take another road. And I think that my relationship with worldly things is just becoming less curious about pain. There was a time where I would look at my money and say, okay, I have $2,000, right? My rent is this $1,500. What should I do with this money? And I would buy what I wanted and then starve what I needed and then spend time trying to make up the difference, at which point God, who's all merciful, would provide to span that gap. But maturity is realizing at a certain point that what discipline actually does is it keeps you from that painstaking anxiety on the other side of your bad choices. Like, I don't have to go through that, like, where's the rent? Where's the rent? Or like, I don't have to be sitting across from a man and wondering, is he going to devastate me because I'm unduly giving my body to somebody I don't really know? I don't go through that. And it's actually kind of funny how specifically chastity, specifically not having sex with men, brings your I don't know the medical term for it, like that kind of thing that makes you out of your fucking mind, like that, it goes away. Honestly, it goes away. It's very difficult to be devastated by somebody that you're not sleeping with. You genuinely don't feel any type of way towards them. It's difficult for the biology, your brain chemistry to conjure that kind of extreme disappointment or heartbreak towards somebody that you haven't given anything of great value to. I could say I wasted my time, but I throw my time out by the bucketful doing all type of nonsense. Like, I'm like addicted to Scrabble on my phone. I do it like for an hour every night before I go to sleep. I love wasting time. Time is meant to be wasted in a lot of ways in this life. You know, I'm definitely not the top most productive person. I can map out my schedule every day and say I am utilizing all of my time wisely. Lie detector test determined that was a lie. Okay, and so all you lose is time, and you can make peace with the loss of time, but the kind of devastation that comes when you have intimated with a person where you feel, especially as a woman, that you've given everything that you have to give to somebody, and then you are met with that wall of like, why can't they marry me? Why can't they provide for me? Why can't they give me their whole heart? Why can't they provide me honesty? I don't have those questions. Honestly. And so the thing is that everything God does is to nurture us, right? And so when you hit these walls of like, oh, I sinned again. Oh, I sinned again. Like it's not, it's that kind of merry-go-round of like, if you want to continue to feel this way, continue to make these choices, right? And I mean, it's easier said than done because environment plays such a huge part in this. It's like when you are in an environment where there's no healthy food, it's easy to say like, don't go to the bodega, you know, and buy another sandwich tomorrow because you're on a diet. And it's difficult to overcome the heart. And I think what I've learned about spiritual arrogance, and I say this often, is that spiritual arrogance is always assuming that we are influencing our environment more than it is influencing us. I stopped putting myself in environments that were going to incur frustrated situations, right? Like, oh, I won't call it sinful. I won't be condemning, but you know not to go down that block. Okay, you know not to go. You know not to answer that call at that time of night. And I'm not gonna lie, it's easier in the Middle East. It is very easy. It's a very much a part of the reason why I chose this place, is because PDA is not even easy here, right? You can't be like making out in the club. It's not appropriate. And when there are these social parameters and the people who are around you they're not going to judge you as much as they are going to feel actually very concerned for you if certain things are going on. I tell my guy friends here that men in America expect you to pay your own way and like expect their wives to, you know, have their children, be homemakers, but also be breadwinners and split half. And they always, you know, the ones who have not interacted with the West very much, who were raised in the Middle East or raised in Northern Africa, they always are like horrified. And that sense of horror gives me a sense of comfort, right? Like their horror at like single motherdom, of the concept of like divorcing a woman and not taking care of your child, like the horror towards it re-racked my brain, and I began to conceive of the possibility of safety in this kind of godly life, right? Like there are days where I feel very daunted by eyes on me. Like I don't want to be stared at. I don't want to be gawked at. I don't want to be, I don't want to be perceived. And then I say to myself, girl, why don't you have like your hijab? Right? Because like if you had on your hijab, like, you know, it would still be, you know, like you still are perceived and people still stare, but you definitely do feel a sense of real protection. Like that's real. Like my hijabi friends are just like, yeah, like I feel safe in this, and I feel like I am signifying something about myself that gives me a sense of comfort and safety. And when I wear it, I feel that. So when I'm not wearing it and I don't feel that, I say to myself like, okay, well, this was a nurturing, you know, this rule set is for a reason. And so everything God does is to nurture us. And we have to decide, you know, and I'll end it at this, like we have to decide what to really go to war for, right? You will lose your, can you all hear me on this? I'm gonna lean in for this one. You will lose your youth to men. You will lose your youth to men. All of it, right? It's very cute when you're 23, you will wake up 35 and your youth will have been wasted on romance. And it's always a bunch of different people and oh, they look so good and he had money and this and that. Like it could be a million different characters. You have to tire of this behavior because it is draining you of your youth. Honestly. Yeah. Like you really do. Like you learn to tire of gluttony because it's draining of your strength, of your things that you want to do, you know, a way that you want to perceive yourself, a kind of confidence. You're being drained of your youth. Like that's pretty much it for me, honestly, at 29. Like I realized I really started around 26 that I just got more serious about my spiritual life and my boundaries with discipline in my body, because I said, if I don't stop this, I'm going to wake up 30 in this same pattern. And we know that, right? Like we know this road leads to nowhere. We know it leads to nothingness. That's what these things promise us. At worst, they promise nothingness. At best, they promise us nothingness. At worst, they promise a serious extraction. We can see it on our faces. We can feel it in our hearts, on our bodies, right? Like, but think about the way you exhaled the first time you really told the truth. You know, think about the way that you felt the first time you told someone, like, you know, I just don't want to go there right now. I'm not feeling you like that. Like, the first time that you really decided that you were worthy of a certain amount of self-respect to stop indulging in certain behavior, it mattered so much more than the million times you said yes. And I think, like, when we go to war for ourselves, when we decide, like, I'm more curious than I am afraid. I'm curious about what life would mean if I stop this thing, more so than I'm afraid of living without it. Because so much of denigrating, self-denigrating behavior is to fill a need that we are deeply afraid will not be filled with something else. And so we have to learn to face those things, to say, you know what, God, I'm afraid to be alone. I'm afraid if I don't indulge this relationship that I know long-term actually has nothing for me, I'm deeply afraid I'm actually just going to end up alone. I need to meet you in that place that I feel alone. You know what, God, I know I have no business selling drugs on the side. I have no business doing this enterprise that I'm doing. I have no business having this OnlyFans. I need you to meet me there because I'm afraid I'm not gonna be able to make my rent if I don't do this little thing I got done on the side, right? We always got our little thing on the side because we don't trust God. And that's really, I'm gonna keep saying it, like, we have to emphasize, like, the lack of trust that we have in God. It is always tested through our sin. It is expounded and exhibited through our sin. We sin because we think this is a need. There is a Moses for every Pharaoh. Everything that rules in our lives that threatens to dominate us, everything that we war with and confront, we think, if I trust you, if I don't use all these tools I got, my vanity, my addiction, if I don't pull for that drug that I'm always using, if I don't call up that person in the middle of the night, if I don't post this thing online, you know, that is if I'm not half naked all the time, I'm afraid I'm not going to have confidence. I'm afraid I'm not going to have money. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if I'm not getting high. We have to bring those things to God and say, like, you know what, like, I don't trust this, but I'm going to try. And what I would say to you coming into these precious last 10 nights of Ramadan, what I would say to you as I am facing the forefront of physical war and the war, you know, of transition, the war of change and the war of life, and all these things warring inside of me because I'm just a convoluted, sophisticated individual. The only thing we can do is surrender ourselves to the realities in front of us, to sit with them very quietly and solemnly and saying, you know what, I don't have it. I don't have it, but God, if you'll meet me there. God, if you'll meet me there. And that's where miracles happen. That's where miracles happen. That's where chains are broken. That's where countries are liberated, to say, you know what, I'm facing something bigger than me, a Goliath, an Israel, an America. I'm facing racism. I'm facing sexism. I'm facing Islamophobia. I'm facing heartbreak. I'm facing debt. I'm facing depression. Whatever your thing is, be it macro or micro or middle, you lay it in front of God and you say, I am so small in this thing. My smallness is threatening to take me out. I can't promise you anything as Bianca Vivian, but what I have learned as a Muslim and a woman living this life is that voila, like I swear to God, he'll meet you there. God will meet you in your smallness. The moment you stop pretending to be an unstoppable force and you embrace being a person. Oh, to see how sufficient he truly is. Mashallah. The joy I have found, the way every time I say I can't find an apartment, I don't know where I'm gonna live next month, and he meets me and blows my mind, and that is what keeps me hopeful, and that's what keeps me holding on, because I'm so curious to see how God is gonna be God when I figure out and submit to how much of God I am not. Oof. I love you guys. I love you down. New people who are, if you made it this far in this episode, I thank you. I welcome you to this new little world. You can see my face, you can hear my voice. I'm reaching out for you in so much love, and I'm safe. I'm taking it hour by hour, minute by minute. This world is changing. But I always said to you, if you walk, you'll never walk alone. And I'm wishing you the best Eid, the best end of Ramadan. I'm hoping that I'll see you real soon. I'm gonna leave the link below if any of you all want to ask questions for the next episode. And I know you'll join me back here because, like I said, we go together real bad. I'm Bianca Vivian, and if you ever need anything at all, you can always ask Viv.